Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's Thursday tutorial. We're going to be doing Q&A. The one question I've been asked is where to find the tutorials that have been uploaded. So when you go into Blackboard, you'll see Learning Guide and Prescribed Reading Material. Go into that, and then you'll find all the tutorials available for download. These downloads will be far smaller than the actual tutorials if you download through the Colab. The maximum size is about 150 megs per each one, and the Saturday tutorials are also included. So what I'll do every week from now on is I upload the tutorials to here as well, so you can download them and not chew up too much data. If you guys want me to bump up the quality of the videos, let me know. I can do that. But if you want a high quality video, you can also watch on YouTube. So it's on YouTube and Blackboard. The lectures are recorded on Blackboard. I compress them and I upload them to Eve, but they're only there for a month. So if you notice, lectures 1 and lecture 0 are already being deleted from Eve in terms of the videos. So there'll be only 1 month cycle of videos at a time. They'll still be available on YouTube all the time though. This is that Eve has a limited amount of space for all the subjects that are being run on it. Remember, as we've mentioned, there's roughly 6 undergrad and 13 postgrad a semester courses on Eve every time, so it does take up a lot of space. So we try not to overextend Eve too much. So tutorials on Blackboard. I hope that's answered the question of where to find them. Okay, so today we're looking at mostly a Q&A session. I've been asked to do a demo of inheritance. We'll look at shared a bit more. We'll discuss composition. And we're going to look at UML diagrams to smooth things over. Good day, sir. For our practical, how should we handle code that is less than 10? I'm assuming you're talking about the course code that is less than 10 characters. Remember, if I remember correctly, where's my question paper? Dot length, that's correct. Consists of a maximum of 10 alphanumerical characters. So if it's less than 10, it's fine. It can't exceed 10. That's the main thing. We just need to see you handling it. There's no specific way I think we expect you to handle it. I stand to be corrected. Mr. Van der Westhuizen is online, but I don't think we never specified how you should handle it. We just specified you should validate for that. Can we use .count? I've never used .count. We'll see what it does in a few minutes. Okay. So we'll come to that as well. So we'll do the .count and .length and see what the difference is. Would be a tone set the maximum. Would be to set the that's a cheap way to do it. Mr. Van der Westhuizen is correct. The easiest way to do it is to set the text box to only allow 10 characters if you're using text boxes. You can't have a message box in a class. You're not allowed to use message boxes in the class. So in the form, yes. In the form, you're welcome to do it. And I already know where you're thinking. Yep. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one thing none of you, okay, let me talk about validation for a few seconds. Validation doesn't always occur inside the class in terms of input. Sometimes the validation, and generally the validation, is done on the form side, on the UI side, on the GUI side. So when the data is passed across the object, it's already verified. Think about when you're filling out an online registration page. It validates information. When you hit submit, it then validates everything. Anything wrong on the submission page, it starts to say things are wrong or something's missing. only once everything's correct will it allow you to create the object. So that is another way of validation. You don't always have to validate within a class. For comments, can I use a message box in the class? No. No message boxes or text boxes or input boxes are allowed in the class at all. Classes have nothing to do with input and output. Classes are there just for data storage and data manipulation. How do we increase the block size? Okay, let's just add that size of column red. Yeah. That I can show you that. That's something you should have been shown that already. There's always things that seem not to be shown to you guys every year. Okay. Everyone okay with what we're going to roughly do on the outline of questions? Let's start up the VB program. Okay, if you want to do inheritance, give me something to do inheritance with, ladies and gentlemen. Give me something to work with. I can't be always the one that has to come up with the stuff. You know, tutorial was week's tutorial 5? No, this is 6. Module examples was good. What modules example? What, the one from the lecture slides? Subject in lecture. Vehicles is a parent class having types of vehicles. Okay, so Omar wants the one we did in class, and we got Mr. van der Westen saying subject in lecture. Okay. Vehicles as a present class, parent class having different types of vehicles. I think let's rather go with the one Omar suggested, as everyone kind of knows the idea. We're on week 5, tutorial 5. Subjects. One of the above. For the one above. Okay, so the one everyone's debating over is we'll do this one. Okay, it's something that it's easy for you to understand. Everyone understands the concept of semester test exams. I think it's the best one to work with. But I will come back to this. I first want to cover composition, as composition is the one due for tomorrow. And someone did ask about that. I want to make sure you guys are able to do tomorrow's practical. So let's give me something for composition. Now we've got an inheritance example. Just reference one above, person, staff, student. We could do that. I need one for composition though. Should we do subjects and students in subjects? Student has subjects. Why do we keep coming back to this, the student subject things? Let's think. Want something more interesting than just student subjects. Bicycle parts. Okay, let's try that. We haven't tried that before. Computer has parts. I think bicycle. Not bicycle. Composition is not easy. Composition is as hard or as difficult as you make it. Houses, rooms, we can do that. We'll do a few examples. How about that? We'll cover quite a few. Okay, so we have our class. Now, a bicycle is made out of what? Pedals, tires, brakes. Let's go with brakes. Frame. Okay, normal bicycle, carbon fiber, brakes. Yeah, I know normal bikes are now carbon fiber, but yeesh. I'm not going into that much detail. Okay. Let's add class wheel. How do I do a tab? One new line for. Okay, I'll cover that, Oliver, as soon as we get the inputs. That's something that actually is very useful for Prac 5. Yeah, okay, so let's do wheels. Now we have brakes and wheels. We'll work with those. Wheels have tires and spokes. Okay, so private tires as, what can I specify tires? I'm just going to call it a string because it has a brand. And we're going to have spokes. As integer, we're going to have private size or diameter as integer. And what are the attributes be an array? We'll try to fit one in. Maybe brakes. Wheels have cassettes on the gear brakes. You know too much about bikes. What is the cassettes? I guess spokes could be. Nah. Spokes are just steel rods. Remember, with classes and objects, we want to try and replicate a real world object as much as possible, a real world entity. So I'll try to fit a array somewhere. Oh, the change zone. Okay, that's what the change zone, because it's. Okay, what we can do. That's where inheritance will start to fit in. You know, Mr. Omar's comment that the cassette runs on the back wheel only. So you'd have a wheel for the front and wheel for the front, back. But let's just try to keep it as simple as possible. So that would be a wheel. And of course, it could have a constructor. Okay, there's no issue with having constructors. And remember, you can have overloaded constructors. Overloaded constructor, as you mentioned in class this morning, is just when you have two constructors with different types of parameters. Remember, this type of constructor, what is this type of constructor called? The first one. Has a specific name. Not a default constructor, it's a what? Okay, good, parameterless. A default constructor is when they don't create one. So if I didn't do a constructor at all, there's a default constructor. The second I make a constructor, I delete the default constructor. I either can create a constructor like I am now, or I can have a parameterless constructor. And a parameterless constructor would be this one. Inside here, you could say tires equals, I don't know, Google tire parts, bicycle, here. Parts. Oh, good grief, there's too much detail. Inner tube, outer tube, room. Which one takes precedent? Whichever one you decide. Remember, the difference between a parameterless and a constructor is the information we know. If we know nothing about the tire when we create the object, then we use the parameter list. If we know the diameter of the tire, we can use the normal constructor. It's more about what do you know before you make the object. It's not about which is more important or which one is more used. It's about what you know. So depending on what you know, you use the correct constructor. So if I know the diameter of the tire is going to be a 15-inch, then I can set the diameter of the tire. If I don't know the details, then I would go with the parameter list. So it all depends on what I know. And then diameter equals 0. Okay, so that's basic. But actually got a lot of questions from you guys, so I will need to not speed it up, but make sure I can get to everyone's questions, everyone's points. But do I need to keep making property methods? Is everyone okay that you just would continue making the property methods for spokes and diameter? I'm not going to make them all because I don't want to spend too much time on things that you're comfortable with. So is everyone okay with the property methods? Does anyone want me to finish the property methods off? I'm assuming the silence is you don't want to do the property methods. Okay, comfortable with them. Okay, it's just that it's going to waste time if I keep doing them. So let's go into bicycle. Now remember, composition is about having the one class made up of other classes, or one object made up of other objects, more specifically, is composition. Determine which variable should be under constructor, or should all variables be included in the constructor? Okay, good question. That's something we haven't actually touched on directly. How do you determine what should be in the constructor or what should be set in the constructor? Generally, all the information you want to set to default values. So I could actually do them all. I know that diameter will be that value and the rest will be empty and 0. You can do them all. Trying to think. There's no fixed rule on you have to do them all. So I'm standing. I can be corrected if Ms. van der Westhuizen disagrees. But I've never seen anything that says you have to do every single instance variable in the constructor. Normally, you would do arrays, things you have to set, though variables that are very important you would set. Depending on the type of class, maybe it's a calculation, and you need to make sure that it doesn't start off on a incorrect value. So you would do the more important information you'd set to default values. Now, getting back to composition. a bicycle, can a bicycle exist without a tire? So a bicycle can exist without a tire. That's scary. Are you going to go anywhere? No. Yes, a tireless. Okay, if you can find me a tireless bicycle, I'll be impressed. Not an exercise bike. I'm talking about a real bike. Okay. Before you start coming up with your wise ass cracks. Okay. That is a bicycle. That's what we're looking at. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually, for the example given, this is actually a very good one because there's a ton of composition here. Okay. All of this is composition. Yes, I'm using Wiki, but Wiki is sometimes easier just to get simple things from. So all of this would be composition. So a bike's actually quite a, if this a bike is like this, I would hate to know what a vehicle is like. Okay, because that's a fairly simple structure. So for composition to exist, we need to have a type inside the structure. What's the right word for this? The component class. Okay. What is the right word? I'm trying to think of it in front of this. It's not the component. The component classes are the things that are inside it. The composition class, I guess. The class that is being built, that must have references to the other. So we'd have reference to wheels. We'd have references to brake. And actually, there's 2 brakes also on a bike. Okay. When it says object, okay, that's actually a very good question. Just classes in context. That doesn't help. The reference you're getting, I will show you how to get that error and how to fix it. So we'd have a public sub new. And inside here, I'm going to do nothing for now. Okay, I'm not going to do anything now. Let's go to the form. Let's throw in a button and let's try and work with it. So, okay, maybe that's why. So we have private. Who's finding me now? Private bicycle. I only want to work with one. So let's go object bicycle as bicycle. Okay. So everyone knows to work with an object, we need to create it, correct? Everyone comfortable with that point? We need to instantiate the object to work with it. You guys are comfortable with that point? Okay. Now, Does this mean I've instantiated the object for wheel and for brake? What I've written now. So I can't, remember, object bicycle dot, I haven't got a property method. Let's give a property method for wheel, so I need to access wheel. Okay. Wheels, w as index. What is? Mario. Samuel. There you go. Now I can come back to here. I have wheels, I can say 1, and I can go dot, and I made tires, and I can go equals input box. Enter something. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Is this going to break? Let me ask you that now. Nope, it's not going to break, or nope, you're not okay with it. Please repeat. So I've created the object bicycle. I've got an object bicycle in the code. Then I'm going and saying that the objects, the bicycle object's wheel, number 1, tire equals an input. Okay. Is this code going to break? Is it going to, is there any underlined code in red? Okay, I know break's empty. Is anything underlined in red? No. But is it going to work? No. Okay. So let's run it so we can prove that. Don't know. You get to a point you will know. I get a system null reference exception object reference not set to an instance of an object. So what does that lovely statement mean? Anyone want to guess? Not read them. Good. Object was never created. Anywhere in the code do I say that wheel equals new wheel? Okay. That's what the error is saying, is I haven't created the type object yet. I can either do the creation here, so I can go and say break one equals new break. Or I can do it here, depending on how you're writing your code, and depending on how you're trying to solve the problem. Now the code won't break. It'll do absolutely nothing. It won't break at least because I've created the object. So there's two ways in which an object can be created in composition. Either you create it inside the constructor of the main class, or you do it in the form and you link it to the main class. If you don't do that, it won't work. You're going to continually getting a null reference exception because the other objects don't exist. Okay, an object has to be created, it has to be instantiated. So we have to call the constructor somewhere, either in the other constructors, or we must call it in the form. Where you do it is up to you, but it must be done. Everyone okay with that point? And it's an important point to keep in mind because it's an easy mistake to make, especially when you're stressed and you're trying to do things quickly. It's something that's easy to overlook. Okay, so make sure you're comfortable with that idea. Okay. Okay, so in terms of the composition, do I need to continue explaining composition, or are you guys happy? Okay, what do I need to explain more? Where are you going to still need to, just give me an idea where to go. So we must an object in every class, create an object in every class. No, not an object in every class. A bicycle is made up of a wheel and brakes, and okay, so it needs to have its constructor either here or in the form create the objects, but you can't do it everywhere, else you're going to get orphan objects. So you have to pick where you do it. You don't, and you mustn't create it in every object, in every class. Okay, so the question is, sir, must we create an object in every class? No. Okay, we're creating objects inside bicycle because bicycle is made up of these objects. Inside wheel, we're not creating an object because wheel is the object. So you got to keep in mind what is composed of what. So a bicycle is composed of wheel and brake. That would make sense. A wheel can exist without a bicycle. A game with adding things to a character. Okay, Mr. Van der Westhuizen has given a good way of explaining it. Who of you play role-playing games? RPGs? Anyone? Okay, one person. That's depressing. Two. First-person shooters. Okay. With a game like that, do you start out with everything? With the best gun, with the best armor, with the best parts? There's your composition. As you progress, cheat codes, what the hell's wrong with you? As you progress, you get better equipment, so you change your composition of your character. Okay, so that's also a composition. Okay, but the gun only exists when you find it, oddly enough. So going back to the actual legit question I see there, can you create an array so we can go see both vehicles at the same time? Yeah, you can. I'm not sure what you mean by array. Because this is an array. Only difference is instead of Okay, I could do that because you do get a tricycle. This is a bicycle, so a bicycle's 2 wheels. Um, an array, you would just pass the size of the array maybe through the constructor and set the size. Or you'd have to. So if I don't declare the size here, I would read wheels to 2, and then I can loop through it. Okay. Okay, have a look at Tuesday's lecture. That'll help you a lot. I think it's Tuesday. No, Tuesday's lecture, we did a lot of composition there. And there was an array there, which actually is quite a long array. So that might help you with that. I'm still going to upload the code for that, but I'll probably do that after 9 o'clock tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, off topic. What is the best way to learn programming, by the way? Practice, but how do you learn? Not by hacking. Ladies and gentlemen, the simple YouTube. By making mistakes. I see one person actually going through it. Through making mistakes. Stack Overflow, look at other codes. No, ladies and gentlemen. You learn by practicing and making mistakes. The more mistakes you make, when you begin, the better, because then you learn how to fix those mistakes and you learn what it actually means. So you don't just learn, okay, I type this, it does that. You learn how to type it and when to type it. So it's not about practicing and always getting it perfect. And anyone that ever says to me they can program and never make a mistake, they're lying. Okay? Anyone that ever says to me that they can code without making a single mistake is lying. Okay? You always will make mistakes. You're always going to get a null reference. You're always going to make a small mistake somewhere, and you got to remember how to fix those mistakes. Mr. Van der Westhuizen pointed out a good thing. Mistakes and then reading your own mistake. Ladies and gentlemen, some of you don't read your own code properly, so you don't see your mistake. So keep that in mind. Read your own code and don't read it as what you think it should be. Read it as it is written, because then you'll find your mistake. Because you're reading it saying, no, it does this, but you're not reading the code that you actually see on your screen. But that's going off topic again. You'll notice both Ms. Van der Westhuizen and myself will go off topic occasionally. Okay, any other questions about composition? Or is everyone okay with composition now? Okay, I'm assuming you guys are okay. Let's switch over to the next one. We've done composition. Let's do a shared. How to link classes. What do you mean link classes? Okay, someone's asked for the form while I read the other question there. How is an object stored versus an array stored in memory? I'll come back to that after the lecture, Oliver. I'm not sure what you mean by link classes. Linking classes in composition is simply having an instance variable of the other type. So I would be linking classes. I link classes here where I say wheel of type as type wheel and brakes as type brake. That's linking. The only way I can think of linking is that. Okay, but that's linking the class. Then when I instantiate, I link the object itself. Remember, the object isn't linked until I link the instance variable to an object. So this would also be the more important link when I create the object. Now, can you explain in steps? What do you mean in steps? Okay, I'm going to put you guys' mics on so you can talk as well. Like what the steps to instantiate property every time. Or for every, I think that's the steps he's talking about. Like this instantiate property every time. Instantiate property every time. Thing is, for every instance variable, you're going to need a property method. To access instance variables, you need a property method. There's no real steps involved there. Your constructor is always needed to create the object. In this case, I'm creating the wheel, resizing the array, and then creating the brakes. There is no, I'm trying to think of the steps. Can we do an example of shed and then come back to steps? So I can maybe have a think about what exactly you're looking for. Okay. I'll come back to Oliver's question about the memory allocation at the end. Let's discuss shared, since it's still something you guys seem to be baffled by. What do you guys know of shared? And like what? It's always difficult asking this type of question online. Okay, can anyone explain to me what shared is in like 2 or 3 words? Okay. While I'm doing that, try to think of a way to explain shared, common amongst many. That's a good global variable, common amongst many. Yeah, those are the right ideas. Except it's more than just a global variable. Can be used outside the class, correct. It's shared amongst objects as well. Okay, coming back to line 11 and 12, I'm creating object for break 1 and then an object for break 2. So I'm instantiating the objects. Okay, I'm just reading back one of the questions. I'm creating break 1 doesn't exist unless I instantiate the object. Then I got to break 2 and I instantiate another object. So I have 2 objects of a brake because a bicycle will have a front brake and a back brake. A shared belongs to the class, not to the object. Correct. Shared belongs to the class. So say I'm making bikes and every bike I make must have its own serial number. But I want the bikes to keep track of it. So what I'd do is I'd have a private shared ID. Let's do next ID as integer and it starts at 0. Then we're going to have a private serial ID as integer. And every time a new object is made, serial ID equals next ID. Well, let me do next ID plus 1. And this is equal to next ID. So what happens is, okay, normally if this was not a shared variable, What would be the value of next ID every single time? Let me ask you that. Okay, correct. If next ID was not shared, the value would always be 1. But since it is shared, it means it exists outside the domain of the object. It exists with the class. So while the application is running, shared has its own space in memory, and it is constantly increasing. So every time I call the constructor, the shared value goes up by 1, and all the objects know they can see it, but it doesn't belong to them. Do shared variables do not have property methods? You can give them property methods. Okay, but what's important to keep in mind, it must be a shared property method. But in most cases, I would say a read only, because I don't want to screw with my shared. Or you could actually make a function, which might make sense. Function current ID. Okay, so that's how you would actually see the shared from outside. You can't modify it, you can't change it, but you can see it. Yeah, you could use a public public shared read-only property. Yes, that also would work. But I want you guys to notice something about shared. Inside shared, I cannot access instance variables. Serial ID is not shared. That means I can't use it inside a shared function. Shared functions come with restrictions. Shared functions can only use shared variables or its own local variables. So be careful with a shared function. It only can use shared variables or local variables. So use the shared in the form, display it. I want to see how it works in action. Okay. How do we call this in the form? How do we shared? No, message box. I'll throw a text box on because you guys like using message boxes all the time. Not the best. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, how many of you actually read a message box? Good, you give me the correct answer as well. How many of you actually stop and read message boxes? Exactly. So what the hell do you guys want to keep doing it? Yeah. So why do you want to keep using it? Message boxes are generally when you've got an error in the code. So to call a shared variable, you go bicycle dot current ID. I call it display. The hell did I call it? Oh, result. Results. Okay. When dealing with shared, we always use the class's name dot the function or variable we're using. Since I don't want the person messing with my shared variable, I make it a private and I give them access to a function or a property method so they can see it but not mess with it. Okay, remember, remember the purpose of encapsulation and abstraction. Only expose what is needed to be exposed. Don't overexpose your code. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very easy to write code. It's very difficult to write code and then add security. It's always best to build in security and access control while you're doing it. Yeah, that's the correct use of a message box. So I only use message box when it exceeds 10 digits. But you only can use a message box in your form, not in your class. Okay, what I'll do is I'll run it. So I'm creating a bicycle object. Shared will be now 1. I'll create another bicycle object. Shared is 2. I'm creating a lot of orphan objects, bear in mind. But shared constantly keeps track of every object I make as well, because it's part of the constructor. So every time I invoke the constructor, I'm calling the shared and increasing it by 1. Let's look at this. How many objects do I actually have in my code that are being used? Ladies and gentlemen, 1. But though my shared is indicating 6, I have made 6 objects, but half of them have become, the 5 have become orphan objects. They've lost their reference. Correct. 1 being used, 5 orphans. So shared doesn't really care about, oh no, this was, you deleted an object, this. It just keeps increasing every time a constructor is called. So it doesn't link to like Batman and Robins. That is a dodgy joke. So shared like some sort of reference number. In the way I'm using it, yes. There's many other uses for shared. Shared is something that is a class level accessibility. So another example of shared is accessing math and then accessing math.pi. Pi is a known number, 3.14 and an infinite values going on. I don't need to go and get the value of pi. I just need to ask the math library, what is pi? Pi is actually a shared variable inside the maths library. So is E. Okay, for those who are doing calculus, you know what E is. But also all the functions here, like power, max, log, floor, cosine H. These are all shared functions and attributes. So we don't need to create the object of maths to use these. These are there by default by using shared. Okay, so these are shared variables we can use without creating the object. So shared also allows us to access things without instantiating an object. So it does serve more than one purpose. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense now. Okay. Any other questions on shared? Because then we've done composition and we've done shared. Look, in first year, we'll tell you when to use shared, or we'll give you a hint to use shared. After that, unfortunately, it's your knowledge as an IT as a developer. Thank you. Done. Shared, it comes with experience. It's not something I can say that you're just going to know. Thing is, you can't use something you don't know. So what our job is also to show you programming techniques and principles. So when you at a later state, you know about it, so you can think and maybe use it when needed. It's not something that you're just going to know. Okay, I need to make this shared. It's more about experience. Okay, you guys are in your first year of programming. You still have a lot to learn. So you will slowly learn when to use shared and when not to use shared from experience. But in practicals, we will tell you where to use shared so you get an idea. There's many uses of shared and not just what we've shown you. Okay. We don't like orphan objects. Okay, so please go through orphan objects, the use of them in VB, basically when to use them. We don't like orphan objects. Orphan objects, something we want to avoid. Okay. Orphan objects generally waste memory until the garbage collector comes and cleans up the memory. So we don't want to unintentionally make orphan objects. Okay. So yes, the reason we spoke about orphan objects is to understand the pointers and references to objects. Okay, that's what we spoke about. It's not something that you're going to implement. You don't want to implement orphan objects in code because it does use up memory that you don't want to waste. Okay. Okay, good. I would use a garbage collector when I'm finished with the code, maybe, not while I'm running it. But the garbage collector will run automatically. The garbage collector runs automatically. It'll run every, I don't know the exact iterations it runs, but it runs periodically to clean up the memory. Okay. In previous versions of VB, it didn't do it, so you would have to do it manually. Nowadays, we have the luxury of it being done automatically. Okay. Let's talk about the count and dot length. Let's see what the difference is. And then we'll come back to I'll do the grid. The inheritance I'll do last because that's going to take the most amount of time. Okay. Let's test something. Dim test string string equals 30. Let's see. I don't like telling you things and then I do the exact opposite, so I like to kind of stick to what I tell you guys. So I avoid using message boxes. txt result 2. So let's go txt result dot text equals test string dot length. Let's convert that to string. And let's do dot count and see what that does. For those aren't aware, a string is actually an array. They do the same. Okay. Count returns the number of elements in a sequence. Length gets the number of characters in the current string object. So they pretty much do the same thing in this context. Okay. They could serve different purposes in other code. No, you don't need a bracket. Some of these you don't need brackets for. Okay. So count and length return the same thing. For those who aren't aware, a string is actually a character of an array of characters. You do get a variable called a char. And that's a single character. But it can only store one. How do you Oh, packet, no. No. No, I don't want to generate a. No. I have to just Google that quickly. Char in. I'm used to other languages, not C#, not VB's chars. I'm I wonder if that's it. That could be. Okay. So let me just open up that. Keyword has VB. No, all languages have infinite. Interesting. I've not seen that before. VB has lots of keywords, so do all languages. Apparently, for a character, that's how you would store or set a character. The value in double quotation marks with a C next to it, based on the Microsoft Docs. Ladies and gentlemen, every language has its own quirks, so you always check the documentation on the language, and then you find out the syntax of things. Okay, but an array is made up of an array. String is made up of an array of characters. Okay, so we've done the count and the length. They give the same thing in this situation. I'm not going to say in all situations. Okay, let's keep moving on, because time is not always in our favor. One of you asked about working with a grid. How do we resize? I'm assuming how to resize a column was the question. Okay. Were you guys taught how to resize columns last semester? Or was that something skipped over as well? Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's get rid of that for now. It's actually quite easy. It's just a pain in the ass to get the right size sometimes. The name of the grid, dot set column length width. Okay. Problem is with this, you only can set one column width at a time. So if you want to reset the entire grid to be bigger, you're going to be sitting there for quite a while. I want to set one column width. So I've just specified column, and then it's width in pixels. So let's go for 150 pixels. Okay, so that is it by default. That is 150. That's way too big. Let's go for 100. Hundred is that. So 120. Okay, so that's 120. So 150 is actually just at the end of the border. So 150 is not too bad then. So 150. And then let's see what 150 does. Yeah. So 150 was just to the edge, so it was just the right length. So how you set it is the name of the grid, dot set underscore col width, which column you want to increase the size to, and what the size must be. Yeah. Okay. So if you need to make the column slightly bigger, that's how you do it. But the problem is this only works per column and not the whole grid. So it only changes. So let me explain so you guys can see it. Let's make them Coles 4. Okay. And we run it. It only increases column 1 because that's one we specified. So if you can remember, it only increases one column. If you want to increase them all, you have to do a line per column. You could loop through it all and change it, yes. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not something you want to do often. We don't really care about the size of the columns and that. We more care about what you do. So I think maybe that's why it's skipped out. But if you need to increase it slightly because the text is too long, you can increase it. It's not something you're going to use moving forward in your career. The grid is just for Informatics 1. It's not something that is extended beyond Informatics 1. Okay. So that is done. Now, UML diagrams we'll come to. Let's do the demo on inheritance. And we're going to use this as a base example, as it is quite straightforward on what we need to do. And it's something that applies to all of you. Let's just get rid of bicycle. Okay, go back there, and let's make on that. We're going to create. One thing, hopefully if the student is, I know there are students that don't have access to computers and that and are doing handwritten code. Please make sure your handwritten code is neat enough the assistants can read it. I've had one or two complaints from assistants just to bring it up to make your code readable. Also becomes very difficult to mark. So please, if that student is watching this or listening in or is watching the video later on, just keep that in mind. If you're doing handwritten code, make it as readable as possible so the assistant doesn't have to struggle to figure it out. Because if they can't understand what you've written, they can't mark it. Okay? There's a limit to our deciphering skills. So please, handwritten code, we'll accept. We have no issue. But we must be able to read it. So don't just do scribbled it. Try and make it as readable as possible and as close to VB as possible by doing sections per button. I'll try upload an example of something we would like to see if I have a chance. I promise anything. We'll get to that. That's something I promise to show at the end as well. Let's make the last one business. Who's doing business management this semester? Or was that last semester? First semester subject, okay. But you guys have done it at one point. Okay, so remember, the idea behind inheritance is to create a common base class, okay, that shares common attributes or is for others. So in this case, we have a UJ module. The UJ module I'm trying to speed up time, save time at least. We put the common aspects together. Now, out of the 4 modules that we've discussed, these are the common ones. Okay. Out of informatics, 1A, business management, mathematics, these are the things that all of them have in common. They have 2 tests and exam. Okay. That's the assumption. Then we're going to have property methods for each. The public property semester test 1. Now, doing each section here is important to do it correctly because we're only going to do it once. Okay, we're not going to make an infinite amount of property methods. We don't need to make these property methods again. So we only need to make one set of property methods in this case, because they're going to be used by all the others. Then we're going to have a function, a public function. I'm not going to do what we discussed this morning. I'll rather do that next week, Tuesday, in the tutorial. So we're going to skip calculate. We're going to do calculate. Final mark. Crap, we need the semester mark. Okay, we're gonna have to do what I spoke about this morning. Private override function calculate SM as integer, return 0. Why are you giving me grief? Oh, public. Overridables can't be private. That's something new. So it's public. Okay, that does make sense. An overridable class must be public because it should be seen by the other classes. So it has to be public. So we return calculate semester mark times 0.5 plus exam mark times 0.5. Okay, and that we can just see it. Everybody okay with that? I'm not going to do the other the other calculation of exam entrance, as that's an overridable functionality as well. So what we have here is a basic parent or base class. It has the common qualities or common attributes and common functionality that all the other classes need. So let's do mathematics. For mathematics, mathematics will inherit the UJ module. Okay. Now it is a UJ module. That means I automatically have access to everything that a UJ module is. I just want to pull this across so I can see the calculation. For mathematics, mathematics will have class tests, which is extra. Okay. So it's going to have a public property class test, C as integer, get return, I'm stopping get first class test C and class test C equals value. It also needs a constructor, public sub new num class tests as integer, and we need to go and say redim class tests to num class tests. Now we need to calculate the semester mark. Okay, so we need to calculate the semester mark. So we go here and we say that we want to public over rides calculate SM overrides function as integer. Okay. Now we are given the option to recalculate the semester mark. So in this case, it's not going to go and use this calculation. It's going to use this calculation. We're going to give it now. First thing we need to know is the average for the class tests. So private, not private, dim total as integer equals 0 for C as integer equals 1 to class test dot length minus 1 total plus equals class tests C average class test as double average class test equals total divided by class tests dot length minus 1. Okay, then we return the following. Which cases do we use -1? I use -1 because of VB. If you guys don't like using the dot length, you are welcome to do this, please. You're welcome to have a num tests equals you're welcome to do that as well. Don't think you have to always use the length. The reason I always use length -1 is I like to use the fact that the array knows how long it is, and the length -1 gives me the correct number of elements in the array because of VB's stupid habit of adding an extra element. Okay, VB always adds an extra space to the array, so to make sure it's the accurate size, I'm -1. So don't think you have to use it. Remember, I think Mr. van der Westhuizen can agree with me on this. We're not trying to show you a language, we're trying to show you how to solve problems. But we also don't want to have it that you guys don't know features. Most languages have the ability that an array has a length function. So it is something that does exist. So it's something you can use. You don't always have to track the size of the array. In first semester, you guys were just starting to understand it, so tracking the size was important. So this is semester test mark 1 times 4 plus, why are you giving me grief? 1 plus semester test 2 mark times 40 plus average class test times 20. Okay, so that's semester mark calculation for maths. So in the code, remember these, I didn't declare my attributes as protected. These are all private, so I go through the property methods. Okay, so answer the first question, I'll come back to the second question. These are private, so the only way to access them is through the property methods. If they were protected, then I could access them directly. But again, you don't want to use protected for everything. You don't want to just because you can. So if the semester marks are calculated the same as the parent class, we will not use overriding. Correct. Only time you override is when you need to change how it works. If the parent class's calculation is correct, you leave it, you don't modify it. That's why I'm not modifying the final mark calculation, because the final mark calculation is correct. So when I create it, you'll see here I can create a dim math 1A, not dim, private maths 1A as mathematics 1A. I say that math 1A equals new mathematics. It's going to ask me for the class test, so I could go dim class test number equals input bar as integer equals cint input box and say number of class tests. And then I can pass in class, not my class test number, and that's done. Now, when I go math 1A dot, you can see I have access to semester test 1, semester test 2, exam, class test, calculate final mark, calculate semester mark. Okay, this might be a bit small. Let me just, I've never seen if this actually works properly, but can you guys see the list of all the different? It does. Okay, thank you. So now in my maths class, did I have semester test 1, semester test 2, and exam? Was there any code in the maths class for these three properties? No. But since I inherited, I gained those. Since I inherited from the UJ module, I automatically gained those attributes and the property methods that go with it. So I don't need to go and redo them for every single module. Every time I inherit, I gain them automatically. So if I wanted to add another subject, I wouldn't need to do it from scratch. I would just say the new subject's a UJ module, and I would have the basic building blocks in place. So it allows us to easily build on top of code that exists already by inheriting it. So we can take a very simple base class and inherit and make a more complicated derived class. It's important to understand every time you go down in derived classes, they get more specialized, they get more specific. Okay. Does that explain a bit more about inheritance? Again, next week, Tuesday, we will spend the entire tutorial on inheritance as well. So don't stress too much there if you're still not getting it. I'm doing it because it was one of the questions that was asked today. Out of time, I need to do the last thing, which is a VB-CRLF and how to do multi-line things, input boxes. So let's do a practical example for you. Let me find something. Dim value as integer. So I'm guessing the question was how to do something like this earlier on. Dim c as integer equals 1. Dim, let's see, all we need to see. Okay. I'm guessing you wanted to do something like that. So you have, in this case, please enter the suggested level force 1, higher certificate 5, diploma 6, higher bachelor degree 7. So you have multi-lines in your text box, in your input box, correct? That is a question asked earlier on. That's done by doing environment.newline. So I use environment.newline. If I also add this, environment dot new tab, environment.tab. There's no tab. So now you ask the tab easy as well. Now, the student that asked what does a VBCRLF do? It does the same as environment.newline. It's just VBCRLF is a macro code from the VB, the Visual Basics old language. The environment.newline looks at whatever environment the computer is running on and finds the new line command. Tab in VB. So by doing that, I get the same result. Okay, I get new lines on both. VB tab. Oh. Heard. Did someone put their hand up? No. Okay, I just heard a beep. Okay, I just looked. You can do something called a VB tab. What that does. These are more for aesthetics. Does absolutely nothing. Multi-line text box work the same way, yes. It's always the line next, to get to the next line, it's environment.newline or VBCRLF. I don't specifically like the VBCRLF. It's a very old way of doing it. The environment.newline is more applicable because, as I said, it looks at the environment. So it looks at whatever operating system your program is running on, and then it uses the correct newline functionality. So it's a more user-friendly one. And in terms of getting it to go to a new line. Because if you run your application on a Linux-based machine, which you can do nowadays, you need to know how to get it to a new line. Environment or new line will work with it regardless. I don't see a tab functionality. I'm looking at all the approaches that I can quickly see, but I don't see ability to tab unless you just, I wonder if it's backslash. Find out. A while since I've tried this. Backslash. /D. The best time. Yeah. No, it's not the best time, but whenever you want to go to a new line in instructions. Right now I'm trying something just for the sake of trying it, because I know these exist. No, not in VB, I guess. Okay, so I can't find how to tab into it. I know there is a way. Okay. Whenever you want to start a new line with like displaying information, environment.newline is your option. Listing options. If you look at a tutorial that we did on Tuesday, when you list all the different qualities of the ant, that's environment.newline. Seriously? Is that a keyword, Mr. van der Westhuizen? Oh, good grief. It is. Let's see if it, does it like it? It likes it. Okay. That is absolutely nothing. Okay. Okay, so it's not just me going mad. Let's scroll down to, okay, so when creating a property method, what is the difference between a property name and the property thing, really? Most languages, what happens is, I understand your question, I truly do, because you see sometimes I put brackets, sometimes I don't put brackets. If I don't put brackets, VB is very nice and does it for me. Put it that way. They should be there, but VB is very nice and it does it for me. So if you don't put it there, VB will go and, like, when it's compiling it, it'll actually put the brackets where it's needed. A lot of IDEs will cover up small like inconsistencies because it kind of knows what you're trying to do. So that's why we aren't too finicky about like if there's brackets or not, because it's not really a relevant thing, because our goal isn't to teach you how to program perfectly in VB. Our goal is to teach you how to program, and then you can learn another language. Or stay in VB, do whatever you want, but you can then expand to other environments. It's more about the principle behind what we're doing. That's important. In other languages, you may not have property methods. You'll have to make a getter and setter, which is a function and a subroutine, but that you'll see next year in ComSci 2. So you'll be exposed to it in one form or another. We're going way over time. I think, yeah, we've hit time. Try tab 10. Okay. We're just throwing random things into this. Tab is part of, yeah, VB tab 10. Oh hell, index out of range. What index? Okay, VB tab 10 is definitely something that's going to work. Let's not worry about the tabbing. I don't think you can do a tab on a new string anyway, on a new line. Okay, let's not worry about that. Anything else, because we are over time now. I don't want to keep you on too long and waste your data. I know you guys are enjoying the extra stuff, but I also got to stop the recording at some point. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and hopefully those who have watched it will maybe have this might have solved one of the things they were battling with during the week for the practical. Again, one thing, ladies and gentlemen, please do not wait for a minute to 9 o'clock or 5 minutes to 9 o'clock to upload your practicals, as you most likely will not get your practical uploaded. Try upload your practicals at least an hour before deadline. Don't wait till last minute. There's nothing we can do to help you if it's last minute. Okay, please, 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 please. And also those doing handwritten code, nothing against you, just make sure we can read it. Write it out neater and structure it that it looks per button. Look, I don't expect when you're doing handwritten code to see all of this per button, but at least this part. When you do your handwritten code, say private sub, btn, initialize, and then you write your instructions. At least give structure to the code, okay? I know there's one or two students that might be doing it a bit rough. We've got to work on that, as the chances of getting a machine between now and then by end of the year aren't going to be very likely. So we need to find a way that we can compromise between your handwriting and the assistance marking. But yeah, that's one thing we have to look at. I'm going to stop the recording now. We'll be online for a bit longer if you have any questions. But if the students that are watching this have questions, Discord and YouTube always can ask questions there.